All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of Limitless MD. I'm your host, Vikram Raya, and today we have Dr. Mike DeLuke. This gentleman is a orthodontist who has really figured out a pathway to fast track financial freedom. He's then helped others really scale their orthodontic and medical practices and their dentistry practices. And he is now living his dream life in Florida, figuring out work-life balance and having passive income support his journeys.
What if you could reclaim hours of free time each week, create legacy building wealth, and devote more energy to your passion projects without giving up on your career as a life-saving MD? Dr. Vikram Raya is a functional cardiologist, high-performance coach, and real estate expert, is here to give you the tools, strategies, and solutions you need to transform your life, unlock your limitless potential, and achieve greatness, all while freeing up your precious time. Welcome to Limitless MD. Let's dive in.
So, Dr. Mike, welcome to the show.
Dr. Vic, thank you so much for having me. Please call me Mike, and I'm happy to be here. It's my absolute pleasure.
Yeah. I think I was on your podcast a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, and we really had a great journey, and we talked about a lot of interesting things. And so I definitely wanted to have you on my podcast because you've done what everyone wants to do, which is you worked hard, you figured out a way to deliver your clinical skills, but you did it with a timestamp, and you were able to hit that timestamp, and boom, you hit your freedom goal, and you actually acted on it. And now you're able to help others in a very unique way, all the while still growing, your work, your net worth, and your impact.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey. So just to paint a little color for your audience. So when I began in the early 2000s, so I'm orthodontist. So if people don't know, you go to dental school, you go to college for 4 years, dental school for 4 years, and then it's a 3-year residency afterwards. And because ortho is so competitive, they typically don't pay you to be an orthodontic resident. So you're taking out additional loans and trying to and I had to get my master's.
That. They don't.
Yeah, it's so competitive.
And how long is that?
It's kind of a whole thing. They get paid GME money from the government. They don't give it to the residents because it's so competitive. They'll fill the seats. There's actually a lot of programs they have to pay. Mine was, I didn't have to pay as much at UConn. So it was 3 years of that additional after dental school. And so I came out in 05 was when I finished up my residency at UConn, my 3 years in ortho. And I was between my wife and I combined, I was newly married, we were about $250,000 in student loan debt, which by today's standards, not an insanely impressive number. 20 years ago, that was a big nut. It was, when I would tell people I was $250,000 in, they're like, what are you going to do? So I had no assets to my name. Neither did my wife. We did not have bad credit card debt at all, but we also had no assets. We were trying to chart a course for ourselves. And I think it's also important to point out we had a very different family background. And one thing I really want to get across is you have to, if you have a significant other spouse, you have to work on sharing a vision with that person financially. It tears apart so many relationships. And my wife and I did not come at this from the same angle. I came from a family that kind of was a professional family, spent what they made, right? Kind of was what I was brought up with. She came from a blue collar family, which was, there wasn't a lot there. So you had to really be a good saver. And we're about as diametrically opposed on this. And we went on a journey together. We started reading books, Smart Couples Finish Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And we just started understanding we wanted something different for our lives. And I didn't want to work my whole life and die at the chair. I literally was like, I wanted to be able to walk away by the age of 50 if I could. And I didn't know I was going to retire before 50 from my clinical practice. I just knew I wanted to be able to. So that was really what motivated us. And I decided to start my own practice from scratch, which certainly wasn't the most lucrative thing to do initially. I got some really nice offers for a fair amount of money, a lot of money, even with some signing bonuses, and I turned it all down because I had my vision. I knew what my vision was, and that's another important point I want to make is we literally, my wife and I sat down and wrote down our goals and objectives, short-term and long-term, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And one of them, I didn't want to work for anybody. I knew I didn't. My personality, I'm like, I'm not going to be a good employee. I just am not. So we knew that. So I said, well, then why am I going to waste time and make someone else money and delay this? I might as well just bite the bullet. I'm living we live like a resident, right? We're living in some little apartment in New Britain, Connecticut. We didn't have any kids yet. just do it now. And so we did. And that started us on the path to where we were able to earn a lot with the practice and make some good decisions that we can talk about throughout the show that kind of charted our course, was laying that groundwork back then.
Yeah. So let's break down that journey. So 2005, you finished orthodontic school or fellowship, and then 2000, and you told me there's a first 5 years just trying to figure things out, do the thing that everyone else does,
Yep.
put things in your 401k and all that kind of stuff. But then
Yep.
I think you became enlightened in 2010. You had an aha moment. Like you said, those books started finally kicking in. The status quo was not good enough. You wanted to be one of those select dentist, orthodontist physicians who thought differently. And so tell me about that journey. When did it really click? And then how did you start investing differently than the average person?
Yeah. So in the beginning, you're right. It was just kind of the first year and a half, there was nothing to invest because the practice wasn't profitable yet. We were just trying to kind of figure it out, run the business, pay our employees, pay our vendors, and we did all that. Never ended up having to dip into my line of credit, my working capital, which was great. So I was really big on running the business efficiently from the beginning. Okay. A lot of people get out and they just want to spend and build this mega practice. And I started really small. I sublet space from another doc the days they weren't there. That let me not have to buy chairs, not have to buy lights, not have to buy all the hard assets. I brought in my own equipment. I kept it in my car, literally. I had boxes, bring them in the week and take them out after the 3 days I was there because he was going to be there for 2. So that part of it,
You ran lean and you got profitable right away.
you got it. And I put all the money that was made initially right back into the business.
Beautiful.
And I know some people will say you're delaying that. You should start to invest right away. And I'm big on that. I'm very much more rich dad than Dave Ramsey in terms of you're trying to pay down all your debts and wait to start to invest. That being said, I knew that if I didn't put everything right back into that business for 1 to 2 years, that there would be a lower chance of success of that business going forward. So to me, I was investing. It wasn't like I was not. I was investing in this business. The key to that was we kept our quality of life, our standard of living. We raised it a little bit, of course, got a little newer car and had a little newer house, but we didn't go out there and buy the house that we would end up buying. I think it was like 3 years later, right? That would be, our family house. We started small and we kept our expenses moderate. That's a big mistake people make because that by doing that, I was able to pump all that extra money that started coming into the practice right back into the practice. Translate to how that happens. A year and a half later, I'm outgrowing my little space. I need more days. A building in the town becomes available. I was able to get the financing to buy the building because the bank looked at me, and even though I still had no assets to my name, they saw how responsible I had been on the books for that year and a half.
Yep.
They were willing to loan me the vast majority of what I needed to purchase that new building plus equipment.
Amazing.
And that was because of being responsible. So setting up those standards. So even though I wasn't using the macro concepts of the books of, say, Rich Dad, Poor Dad right away, the delayed gratification and the fiscal discipline, I was, and we were practicing.
And I would say, I would actually challenge you on your benefit. I would say, hey, I think you did. You were an E and then you became an S very quickly. Mm-hmm. And you said, hey, look, how do I get to the right side of the quadrant? Well, you're rapidly building your business. And so the moment you bought the building, you got team members, employees. It was a true business. And so you were building an asset. It just happened to be your own business.
Exactly.
So although you can invest in assets like an investor, you can buy assets like real estate, but in a way, your orthodontic practice was twofold. It was a real estate play, and it was a business, a full-fledged, scalable, and sellable business that you can exit for a multiple on later.
So it's so true. It's exactly what happened. I got the real estate, and it turned out this particular building had. This was in upstate New York. If any of your listeners know of Union College or that area outside of Albany, New York, there's a lot of old homes. This was an old 6,000 square foot Victorian building with a carriage house out back. So on the second and third floor, there was a tenant. And in the carriage house, we renovated that and put a tenant. So you said it perfectly. I had formed a separate LLC. So now I've got my practice PC. I've got my separate LLC. I start to understand, hey, wait, you can shift income very legally and very appropriately between these entities. Mm-hmm. And you have now it opens up a whole another world of tax deductions when you're in that game. And then because I was on site managing, I was an active investor in the real estate, which opened up additional tax investments and incentives, tax incentives, and allowed me to have other investments in the property. And that started the snowballing of how, and it literally is. And I know Dave Ramsey talks about that snowball impact. And even though I'm not a huge subscriber to his philosophy, that is the concept. You do have to get it rolling at some point, right?
Yes.
And if you just take this big, huge snowball that's rolling down, it's too heavy. It's too much for us to handle. You got to work yourself up to it. So just start small at this building. And then that now I'm like, well, wait. I know how to do this with having an entity for an LLC. Let me start a new LLC and buy a property up in the Adirondacks and have that property that we rent out, and then we can go use that and rent that as well. And so you just start thinking differently.
Yes. I'm going to talk about taxes for a second. So,
yeah,
if you're an employee and you work for a DSO or a hospital group, you're going to get a W-2, and essentially 50% of your money is taxed, and that's your big raise. So essentially, even though you're working so hard, you're only essentially you don't get paid until June or July of the financial year, because all of the first half of it was given to Uncle Sam. And so the tax code rewards entrepreneurship, it rewards real estate, and it rewards business owners, and it rewards investors. It does not reward employees.
Nope.
And so if you're going to H&R Block and TurboTax and you're listening to this podcast, you're very simple in your way you earn income, and you're probably not on the wealthy pathway yet, I would say,
Right.
And maybe you are. Maybe you're making a 2 million to 3 million a year, but still, like, if you don't have if you're as simple as going to H&R Block and TurboTax, that means you're not complex. And the complexity creates opportunity. So that's where you're like, okay, so now you create an LLC, maybe you're a 1099 now. Even then you have a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of capabilities, and then you start investing even passively in investments. Then you get a K1. Now you're trying to get multiple streams of income.
Yep.
And then owning assets, whether that's real estate, stocks, gold, whatever, and then the key, if you want to be like Dr. Mike, which was, hey, by the age of 50, I don't want to still practice if I don't have to. Then what you need to do is eventually create enough streams of non-clinical income that build up over time. And you use the word snowball, which I love. They snowball to the point where you're like, man, I'm covering all my expenses of living from other sources, that I don't have to go into the chair or to the stethoscope or whatever analogy you would like to use.
Yep.
And so you did it. So you went from 2010 to 2020. And tell me, like, as you're approaching 2020, it was COVID, you told me, we went to the green room, and you had a conversation with, I guess, your financial advisor. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So one challenge, I'll back up for a second. So when we set those goals, I still have the notebook that we wrote those goals in. And it was probably 2004, I think it was, that we did that. And Vic, we literally checked all of them off. It's unbelievable how powerful that is to really write down your goals and your vision. And so one of them was to have an associate, bring an associate in the practice within 15 years. So I did bring an associate in 2019, which would have been 14 years. Again, how strange it is how these things play out. The problem was it was very, very difficult to find somebody and the guy who valued my practice, who does more orthodontic practice transitions than anyone in the world, said point blank, you're going to have a hard time finding someone. He said 2 reasons. One, you've built something bigger and more intimidating than most new young docs could ever conceive of walking into. It's just the reality. They're just not going to be able to fill your shoes. He goes, number two, you're in Schenectady, New York. And he goes, I am not exactly getting phone calls and emails to come to Schenectady, New York. He's like, it's beautiful here, but it's not going to. He's like, if you put this in the South, I'd have a line of docs down the block that were begging to come in and buy in and buy out, which is what I was looking for. I wanted someone to come in and get equity after a short-term associateship and then buy out. Well, I brought this guy in 2019 and realized within the first 3 weeks that it was not going to work. Just values, things that were happening. Not we're getting into detail, but anyone who's owned a business knows you get that feeling, you try to remediate, you try to coach, and you're better off cutting bait, whether it's a doctor or a front-end team member or lab tech. When you realize get out. So that was hard. I had to pay my part of the contract. I mean, I'd put 9 months of vetting and work and employment agreements and associate agreements. We had it all laid out. And so then COVID hit, and I was at the point, Vic, where I built something that was so big that it was owning me. It really was. I mean, I'm proud of that in one regard because it's like, wow, I built that myself. And the other regard, I'm a little embarrassed because it's like I should have seen that coming, and I relied on the fact that I would just find another doc. Like, of course, I could find another doc. And part of it too was because I was doing different techniques than what they're taught. That's what I'm teaching now. A lot of young docs would come in and they're like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, this isn't what I learned. So it was just a bunch of challenges. So I sat down with my financial advisor when we had the COVID shutdown. It kind of let me breathe and catch my breath. And my wife and I looked at it, and she's like, she's like, the money's great, but we already have done so well financially. Like, do you really want to go another 5 or 10 years at this and kill yourself doing this, right? Get cancer, have a heart attack, not be able to enjoy it. And do you want to miss that time with our kids? At this point, I had a child that was like just about to start high school and just going into middle school. And I was like, yeah. So we talked to our financial advisor and we said, is this an option? Like, if let's just throw everything, let's say I don't even sell the practice for anything, let's just take that off. If I walk away, can I? So this is 15 years, almost to the day after I opened the doors. And he said, yeah, you can. You have enough passive income streams based on the expenses you spend in a month. You can walk away. He's like, some of your long-term things you'd want to maybe do. And we own properties in different places. Like, if you're acquiring more properties or certain things, you might have to think about some of those long-term things, but those are all wants. Those weren't needs, right? He's like, but your day-to-day, your kids' education, everything is funded. You're fine. You can walk away. I can't tell you how freeing that is to hear. Because now I'm like, wait, what am I doing this for then? Yes, loving treating the patients and having an impact in my community, that was huge. But I knew I could do that in other ways. I mean, doing it with your own two hands, you can do it. I impact way more lives now with my mouth and teaching and coaching people than I could just in my own office, me. And so I was like, I need to think about this differently. And that really started me on the path to think about maybe the second phase of my career is not at the chair. Maybe it's having a different impact on my profession than just, for Dr. Mike in the community, treating my patients.
So let's talk about the second chapter. You moved to Florida. Where in Florida?
Naples.
Naples, beautiful, right? So got that beautiful tan there. That's great.
Not a tough place to live. We finally got some warm weather. We've been going under some cold weather lately.
Naples, living your dream life. You have a beautiful wife. You have kids. Everything's going well. And how are you fulfilling yourself, and how are you still making income? Let's talk about that.
So I ended up, as I transitioned out of my practice, I made a really unique decision. And that was, I decided I got offers to sell my practice for a lot of money to corporates, because that's kind of become a big thing in ortho. It's a little less so now, but around COVID, that was huge. You were getting, 5 to 7x EBITDA returns on this. But I also took my patient care very personally. I was very well known in my community. I grew up there. I treated family and friends of family, and I was really known in that community. And I did a lot of things that were unique. And I knew that corporate was just going to come in and bring whoever in and take over care. And orthodontics is a continuum. This is different if it's like general dentistry or an oral surgery office where it's like, like you see the patient for that procedure and that's it. This is a continuum. And I knew someone was going to come in and they want you there usually for like 6 months to hang around. Sometimes it's a couple of years, and then they just transition out. But it's a really hard thing to go through. And I'm like, I built this. I don't want to just give it up for a payday, especially since I didn't need to, right? I mean, yes, it could have given me, maybe I could have flown private, which I'm not at that point yet, but it's like, I could have done that a little sooner. But at the same time, it's like that to sell out my patients, I'm not going to sell out my patients for that. That's not who I am. So I phased it down. I literally finished up every single case I started. Now that has an interesting advantage too, from a tax perspective and from a liquidation standpoint. There's still a lot of money coming into one of those practices. That's an ortho practice. You have patients on accounts receivable. So but my expenses basically went away because I wasn't buying new equipment. I wasn't paying staff as much. And so there was a lot, so that was one big source of revenue. I was able to kind of milk that down. People don't talk about that, and I don't know why. I mean, I built it. I had all this money on the table. Why not get it? Why give it to some corporate? So I was able to do that. And then And there's tax ramifications too when you sell to a corporate, which I was able to minimize that by having the business. So anyway, I started building DeLuke Orthodontic Coaching, and I just started to build the platform of a way to start to help educate my colleagues on the things that help me succeed both personally and professionally.
Okay.
And
So you're
initially,
coaching on you mentioned like financial strategies, but you're also on just how to grow the practice and also like unique strategies like airway and things like that.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit of all the stuff you love to talk about anyway, and you're getting
Yeah,
paid. You're getting paid for it. That's awesome.
yeah,
Were you
yeah.
scared to start a coaching practice?
No, no, because I'd run the practice and I started to from scratch before. I knew I could do it. I didn't know what it would look like in terms of the X's and O's necessarily. So that was a little, there's a little apprehension there. Like I didn't know I was going to start a podcast. It was actually my wife's idea a few years ago. I was like, how do I get this message out? Like I'm building all this content. I'm an ADA, American Dental Association recognized CE provider. I got that certification. But how do I like get it out? She's like, to do podcasts. Like, I don't know about podcasts, but I started it and we just did yesterday released our 143rd episode. So it's gotten really big and really, really popular, which is fun. So, that was part of it. And that's been fun. I speak around the world now. I get flown around the world to give lectures, to talks, to groups. And I love doing it. I'm super passionate about that. Lets me reach a wide audience. So I guess it's interesting to really answer your question, Vic. I knew in the second half of my career, I wanted to do something like what I'm doing right now. That was one of my goals.
Yeah.
I thought I would still kind of be involved in a practice a little bit still. I thought I could kind of do both.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, knowing my personality, it's great that I had the separation from my practice because I would have felt torn between the two.
Yeah.
Now I'm all in. And now I'm on faculty at 2 different institutions. I'm teaching young residents hands-on. I'm able to keep my hands in it by doing that. So I'm still involved clinically. I'm licensed in Florida. So I do some work for locum tenens work. So yeah, I get to keep my hands in it. And
so you got a lot of variety.
Time, yeah.
You got a lot of, it's like you have all your passions are being met and it's all a get to, not a have to. That's amazing.
Yes.
Let's do this. Let's just talk about the financial vehicles that led you to the freedom.
Sure.
Where did you invest?
So initially I did, and I have to say, I've had guests on my show too who talk about not doing anything in the traditional sort of paper asset world. I did some of that and I don't regret that. There are definitely tax advantages to doing that. So that can help. I mean, especially when you have to be a really high income producer, as a lot of docs or people listen to your show are. There's advantages to that. And I'm not telling anybody, obviously, how to invest their dollars. I'm just saying what I did. I don't look
So
back.
what do you mean by paper? Like you said, paper?
Like 401 kind of standard investments, 401k, profit sharing.
Yeah.
When you cash balance plans, with a cash balance plan, you can sock away some serious dollars. And remember, I was in New York at that time.
Why don't you talk about a cash balance plan? What does that mean to you, and how did you take advantage of it?
So in addition to once you have a 401k profit sharing plan set up with your practice, you are able to then set aside a certain amount of money, and it can be over $100,000 potentially in a year that you can set aside tax free. So you literally will be able to invest that money. And there's tiers and it's well beyond my pay grade, the X's and O's of how it goes. So you want to ask your financial advisor, your CPA, that's another side point. You have to have a good team. You have to have people who know what they're doing with this stuff. You can't go weekend warrior this and start setting these plans up. Compliance is so important. You have to make sure this stuff is buttoned up.
So that was level one. What was, describe how did you escalate above that?
Yeah. So once I got going into that, I just started, there was more, another point that is great a little tip for people, have a separate account in a high yield savings, which there are tons of them now, where you call it your sort of overflow account, your investment account, right? It's not part of your daily operating expenses. It's not where you have it earmarked separately than your, say, emergency fund, but you have money that is beyond your cost of living for that month. When more money is coming in, put it somewhere else. Don't just keep looking at that one number in your one bank account going up, because the tendency a lot of times is to start to want to spend that down for people. Put it in another vehicle and then consider that an investment, because it is. Mentally, you don't touch that money. I mean, unless some horrible emergency came up, you don't touch that money. So that money was really building a lot and quickly, to the point that to keep FDIC coverage, we're like, we need another one. And so we're getting like multiple, savings accounts here. And so my wife and I are like, we've got we're fools. This is not what affluent people do with their money. They don't just like sit it here. And we have a great financial advisor, and we were communicating with him. He's like, yeah, we've got to find the right vehicle. For us, we love real estate. And so the next thing was he had some connections to people who were seeking investors for luxury apartment buildings. They were building around the country, basically east to southeast of the country at that time. And or they were building some and buying others and flipping them and looking for investors. But they were luxury in like Dallas and
Yeah.
Fort Lauderdale and
Yeah. Yeah.
Atlanta and North Carolina. So we did that. That was our first one. That was kind of the gateway. Because I had already invested in my own real estate. We had a property in Florida that we rented out. We had a property in the Adirondacks we rented out. I had my office building that we rented out as well. So we were kind of dabbling in that still, maximizing our standard retirement type qualified plans.
Yeah.
And then that was like the first out of the box one that we started to do. And it was like, wow, okay, we pledged a certain amount of dollars over, say, 3 to 4 years, and they have capital calls. And then we just get like quarterly distributions and you do nothing, like nothing. I mean, yes, you're paying some fees all in there, but at the same time,
Yeah.
even like my rental property in Florida and in the Adirondacks, it's still work. Like there's
Yeah.
tax
Yeah.
filings. There's,
Yeah.
you have to manage
Found
stuff.
the joy of passive investments. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I
So
had
then
property managers and,
what was next?
then it turned into storage units. So there's a
okay.
guy who was up in my area who has gotten to be very big. It is currently the biggest privately held storage unit company in the world.
Oh, wow.
And he's on fund 3. I'm in fund 3 as well. This was fund 2. And to your audience, I met him because I saw an article in the local business paper and I decided to cold call the guy.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, here I am. And through twist of fate, turns out he was a donor on to the cleft craniofacial team that I was a doc on. We had no idea. And he let me in for way less than what most people were paying to get in, because he has like the CEO of Chase Bank, the CEO of Home Depot at the time. I mean, big players.
It's big players. And so
Big players.
he's,
Yeah. So I didn't belong there.
He has institutions involved. And so if you're able to write a check and get in, then he did you a favor.
Yeah, completely. So he came back to me. He said, I'll tell you what, I like you. You're a local guy. You're doing great things for the community. Come up with a number and call me back tomorrow. And talked to my financial advisor, my wife. We came up with a number, went back to him. I didn't know if he'd accept it or not. And he's like, we're good. I'll get the paperwork to you. And so that started that one. And then I've since done reinvestments with him and additional funds with him. And it's been very, very beneficial. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's great. So
Yeah.
what advice do you have for young doctors, young dentists, young orthodontists out there who want to have a story similar to yours? What is like just the 3 advices, action items, or just belief systems that you think they need to have?
Number 1, delayed gratification.
Mm.
You have to. And it's so much sweeter when you get it. Like it's so much sweeter when you get that gratification, when you've waited for it. Number 2, vision and goal planning.
Mm-hmm.
You have to you have to chart your course, right? I mean, you don't go, we're at the point now, you won't drive an hour without setting your GPS and trying to figure out the best way to go avoid traffic, right? You've got to have an endpoint that you're shooting for. It can't just be this like, yeah, I kind of want to have a boat one day. Right? Yeah, that's not important. You want that to be part of your goals. Like within 5 years, I want a boat. And how big is that boat? And where's that boat going to be? Visualize it. Where are you in 20 years? I say a lot of times on my show, who is 20-year you? Where are they? Yep. Where are they? Are they married? Are they divorced? They have kids. They live in, so for the young docs, picture yourself. I have my residents go through that exercise. And the last one, don't follow the pack. Don't follow the pack. Don't be afraid to stray from the pack. Don't get caught in, we do this so much. I'm not sure if in your profession it happens as much as in the dental profession, but it's like, oh, so-and-so's in this investment and so-and-so's doing this. And then it's like, I've got to be in that, right? And most of us do it, whether it's crypto or whether it's the hottest stock. We're all tempted by that. I'm not saying there's not things you do that way, but figure out your vision. Have good, add a little fourth here. Have an advisory team. We talked about that too.
Yeah, professional superpower team, yeah.
Yeah, get your team together. Make sure the decisions are in line with your vision. If it's not in your vision to buy a restaurant and you don't want to be like a restaurateur, then don't do it. Just because like your couple doc buddies are going in on this restaurant, don't be afraid to be like, sorry guys, like I'm out on this one. And that's hard. It sounds easy to say that. It's like, well, yeah, why would I? But when you're tempted, I've seen people make some really dumb investments just because it was what their friends were doing.
Yep. That's awesome, man. That's awesome advice. I'm curious, what's on your nightstand, or what are the last couple of books that have you've listened to or heard?
Okay, well, one I really recommend, Morgan Housel's Psychology of Money. Read that not too long ago.
Yeah,
My
I
financial
like that one.
advisor recommended that one. The That it just paints a good picture of how to think about money, I guess would be the best way, right?
Yeah.
We referenced it before, but as a starter book, everyone should be reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. Yes, I made my teenage girls read it. Like,
And my plug is to read the part two, which is cash flow quadrant.
I would agree.
That's the better
Thank you.
part of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Read Cash Flow Quadrant. I do a lot of, I got one right here actually. I do a lot of reading in my field. So this is a guy, this is a tech book on pediatric treatment of sleep apnea. So I'm spending a lot of reading on that. A good book, if just not in the financial sense, but Breath by James Nestor. If people haven't read that, that raises a lot of great awareness. I'm actually on a board. I just got appointed to a board on a Children's Airway First Foundation, and James is part of that board.
Oh, wow.
And so he's a great guy, and that's a great book to just start to get some awareness out there. It's kind of like it's almost like the Rich Dad Poor Dad of like Airway. It's like just to start to get you thinking about things. So
That's awesome.
yeah, and I'm also reading a communication book by Alan Alda. Remember Alan Alda? From MASH, he was the actor. Yeah, he wrote a book on how to communicate more effectively, and I'm reading that right now too, as well. It's just it's interesting. I always like
guys,
learning
as you
about
know from my podcast, readers are leaders and leaders are readers. So got to keep your mind occupied with the right information, and you never know when it actually percolates into the right action when you need it. So
That's so true.
Mike, you've been phenomenal. You're a great storyteller. Your journey is amazing, and it's an example of what's possible. How can people learn about you, learn about your podcast, get into your ecosystem, and perhaps even work with you?
Oh, thanks, Vic. To reach me, if people want to reach me, Dr. Mike at the Ortho Coach. Feel free to shoot me an email. My website is theorthocoach.com, and it's THE ortho or ORTHO coach, all one word. And then Instagram at the Ortho Coach, YouTube at the Ortho Coach. I don't love social media, so I don't put as much time into that as I know I should, but it's just it's not my forte. I struggle through it, but
just stick to your fortes, and you can outsource the rest.
And that's how I feel. Yeah, I just so I put some content on there, just kind of keep it up. But the podcast is called the Doc Podcast, so it's and then DOC Doc Podcast, and Apple, Spotify, YouTube, awesome. And it's been doing great. It's been getting some awards on Spotify, and it's been growing a lot. So it's been kind of fun. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, you have it from Dr. Mike. The journey is real. Anyone can get on it. Just figure out what you want to do. Have the vision, like he's talked about. Have the team, and then go for it. Don't follow the pack. Be a contrarian. Mm-hmm. So with that said, guys, thank you again for joining us for this podcast. Continue to follow us on all the socials. And until next time, be phenomenal.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Limitless MD. If you found value from this episode, I encourage you to share this episode with a friend and let me know by leaving a review. For more information, make sure you check out the links in the show notes below or simply visit vikramraya.com. Until next time, be phenomenal.